Good afternoon. My name is Sam Jahari,
And I am Charlie Buckley.
and we're coming to you live from Community Parent here on Flint Talk Radio. Today we're going to be talking about addiction and how Community Parent was formed approximately 3 years ago, Valentine's Day. I lost my daughter to addiction, to a heroin overdose. And my daughter, she was a great kid. She played sports. She was in debate. And after I lost her, when you're going through it, you're just quiet and you don't want to share that with everybody. So because of the shame and humiliation and stuff. But afterwards, as I started talking about the loss, I found everybody was coming out of the woodworks, stating that this is happening in their own home. So Community Parent was formed, and at that same time, we started a program called Chasing the Dragon, and we've been in schools in front of over 35,000 kids. But we wanted to share with you of our loss and really how we got here. Sound good?
Sure, thanks, Sam. My name is Charlie Buckley, and while Sam's going to talk to you today about the perspective of addiction and from a parent's perspective, my focus is a little bit more personal as it relates to me as a recovering addict alcoholic, and I think that our primary goal moving forward is education and awareness of this disease.
Exactly.
And I think it's important to recognize that it is a disease. Too many times, and I think that's where the shame and the stigma and the embarrassment comes into play, because people think it's free will. They think it's a choice. They think you wake up in the morning and you decide that you're going to throw everything away.
Exactly. To be honest with you, with my daughter, I turned her to a system that I thought was there to help me. At 15 years old, she had an older boyfriend, and she was running away from home, and all of a sudden I find out she's on heroin. It took me a long time to get in front of a judge, which I'm pleading to everybody to get me in front of a judge to help my daughter, because I thought, I don't know any better. And to be honest with you, I had the same stigma. I thought this was a matter of choice, because that's what I seen within the system, within doctors, within everybody that I came across. But when I turned over to a system, I found that they didn't have a clue. And really, they weren't there to really help me. They looked upon me like I was to blame. At one time, my daughter, she had done heroin, over $700 worth, and they found her. She had ran away for a couple days. They found her, and they took her in front of the magistrate, and the magistrate says, I'm worried about her. I want her to go see a doctor first before we send her to jail. So when we send her to to the emergency room, this doctor's looking at her, and he's yelling. She's yelling at her. She's like, why should I do anything for you? You did this to yourself. There's people that are sick, that are waiting for a bed, and here you come, you're doing this to yourself. And I thought the same way, because this is what I'm seeing within our system. Here's a doctor that should know something about addiction and should have some compassion for somebody that's sick, but I didn't see that. And to be honest with you, I didn't learn about addiction until after the death of my daughter. And sometimes I look at I didn't have the compassion. I thought it was a matter of choice, but it's not. The matter of choice is that first time. That's choice.
Right.
But when this disease has got a hold of you and that drug's got a hold of you, you're not your own person. You become a monster. You become a thief, a liar, a prostitute, whatever it is, a murderer, to get whatever you need to get your drug.
Right. Now, Sam, I've had the unfortunate benefit of listening to you talk about Brianna more times than I ever thought I'd want to hear that story. And as I've said publicly, I don't know how you do that when we make those presentations. But for the benefit of the audience that's listening today that has not heard that story, maybe briefly give a snapshot of with Brianna and the history of the addiction gene with her mother, and some of the other things that you've shared that you feel comfortable sharing today.
Sure. My daughter's mom was an addict. She was also a heroin addict, and I had got full custody of Brianna when she was 3 years old. And as a parent or as a father, you are the protector. And my whole life, I had to protect her from her own mom. And through growing up and stuff, I see that she was sad, and she would say, "Why does my mom love the drug more than me?" And as much as I would say, "Oh, it's a sickness and stuff," I really didn't know to what extent. And Brianna lost her mom at the age of 13. She had just graduated from 8th grade, getting ready to be a freshman, and a couple of weeks after that, she lost her mother. And at that point, it just sent, when you lose somebody, it's like a part of you goes with them. And I don't think Brianna ever really recovered from that loss. She always thought there was time that they were going to have that connection. Right. And her mom, instead of, being a parent, she'd try to be her best friend. You can't be a parent and be a best friend. It just doesn't work out that way. You have to be a parent. So, as when Brianna lost her mom, she started experimenting. She started cutting herself. She was, I'm sure she was in depression. Mm-hmm. Even though I had her with a therapist, with Brianna all her life, they wanted to put a label on her. She's ADD, she's ADHD. Finally, they said, "Oh, you know what? She's bipolar. That's why she's self-medicating." And as a parent, I'm just a parent. Here's the professionals telling you this, and you say, okay, maybe she needs to be medicated. To be honest with you, I don't have much faith in our doctors, and I don't think prescription drugs is working. I think it's making more havoc and getting kids addicted. I don't care what kind of problems you have, even from depression. They give you these medicine that you can never get off of. And, from depression, the biggest side effects of those antidepressants is suicide.
Right.
And it's happening, So, going through it with Brianna, it's like she kept running away and stuff. And at this point, I didn't know what else to do with her. So I turned her over to the system, I thought, to get some help. It took me about 4 or 5 months before I finally got in front of a judge, and I thought, finally, I can get somebody to help me, listen to my story, and I got up to bat for her because I thought she was a good kid, She, all of a sudden, there's this older boy in her life, she's 15, and here's a boy that's 18, and I had no protection from him. They said, well, if they're having sex, she has to make the complaint. Here's somebody that's 15, she's infatuated with this boy. Now he's got her hooked on heroin, so this is her drug dealer,
right.
Person that she loves. And getting in front of this judge, I'm pleading for help for my child. And this judge looks at me like, you just want to blame it on everybody that you have this problem instead of just taking a couple weeks off and being home with your child. And I was dumbfounded. I'm like, how the hell did this person get his job? How'd they put him on a bench?
Right.
There was no compassion. There was no. He didn't understand what was going on. Where somebody you would think that, well, if you're here, you should have all the smarts and all the knowledge of how you're supposed to deal with this person. And I didn't see that. And to be honest with you, it wasn't just the judge. From protective services to the probation officer to everybody I came across, they didn't really have an understanding or tell me this is a disease and this is how we need to treat it, or this. They looked upon me like I'm to blame, and they had the same stigma. She should just quit.
No, it's very, very sad. It's often spoken about now that addiction is, you can't open up a newspaper, you can't turn on the television, turn on the radio without seeing a celebrity or an athlete or somebody that's going into rehab, coming out of rehab, getting arrested for something under the influence. And it's still, though, those are the people that get the headlines. Philip Seymour Hoffman dies and it's front page news. And
all of a sudden, Oprah wants to do a show on it.
No, and it was a tragedy. There's no doubt about it. It was a tragedy. However, the average addict is the average person. It does not discriminate.
Exactly.
There is no demographic that says if you're black, if you're white, if you're male, if you're female, if you're Catholic, if you're Protestant, if you're Jewish, if you're Muslim. Having been in a rehab facility myself, if you were to shoot a shotgun at a target of humanity, it's going to hit everybody.
Exactly.
It doesn't know income level, education. It truly starts out with that genetic component.
Exactly.
And what they're trying to do is, too often, we're trying to legislate and criminalize a public health issue.
Exactly. Well, here's a mental health issue that somebody's sick and we send them to jail. 10% of us have these addiction genes. 10%, which that's a lot of people. You look in the United States alone, we got over 24 million addicts. And people that are addicts, only 10% of them actually ever go and get help. Right. Because of the stigma. And as a nation, we need to be a lot more compassionate, for someone that's sick.
Well, the disease of addiction in 2013 claimed 200,000 lives in the United States. And of that 200,000, the largest percentage of that, 88,000 of those people died from alcoholism. And that's a legal drug. And, now we have the President of the United States basically being a pro-marijuana proponent. And, states like Colorado where, complete decriminalization. And there's an absolutely a valid argument for medical marijuana and the true use of for medicinal purposes. However, I would have to guess that 90% of the people that I know that are carrying that card, they developed glaucoma overnight. Or they were suffering from some stress.
Well, to be honest with you, I've looked at a little bit, about the marijuana use and what it's good for. They have a problem with the marijuana, but a lot of the prescription drugs that's prescribed, here's things that are worse, and most heroin users, 4 out of 5,
I would say 80%. Yeah.
Start, with prescription drugs. We have doctors that are just prescribing drugs like candy. And somewhere, as a father, as a teacher or whatever, we don't know exactly, I don't know what's going to get us to the right thing. But I know one thing, since this war on drugs in the 1970s, we've got more prisons, we've got more police, we've got more of everything, and this war on drugs just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Oh no!
So we definitely need to find a different solution to where we've gotten. It's, till 20 years ago, opiates, which is like your hydrocodone, your Percocets, all these
Vicodin, Lortab, Norco, OxyContin, hydrocodone, oxycodone. I've taken them all.
These opiates, they came out for people that were dying. Mm-hmm. Until 20 years ago, the pharmaceutical companies decided, hey, it's time to put these out on the market. And they came heavy at it. And they don't have a problem, for how many people we lose along the way.
Right.
I think of big pharmaceutical companies, kind of like the cigarette companies, they foresee how many people they're going to die, but the money is more important till we finally want to say, okay, enough is enough. So,
well, that's the interesting piece of this. You look at that 10% of us that are born with this gene. Now, my family, for example, I can look back for every generation that I've been alive, and I can see this gene of addiction have an impact. And whether it was my great-grandfather's generation, my grandfather's generation, my father's generation, mine, and now into the generation of my children. In 2008, we buried one of my cousins to a heroin overdose. And I remember, coming home from school when I was in college and, holding this little baby. And, 20 years later,
yep.
Here you go. But I come from a family, probably like a lot of us, where we talked about everything, but we didn't talk about depression. We didn't talk about addiction. We didn't talk about alcoholism. We didn't talk about the tough topics, the tough subjects.
Yeah. I find the same thing, and to be honest with you, that's a big thing why community parent, we go into the schools and stuff. What happens is we put this presentation of Chasing the Dragon on so we can educate these kids on addiction, and another thing, to get them hopefully talking with their parents.
Sure.
About these issues that's very important. And I grew up in a family of 8. I remember in the 1970s, my dad was in a bad car accident. And from the car accident, they sent him home with morphine. And my mom used to administer the shots. And I remember this one weekend, my dad didn't have any. And he took this, we had this alcohol drink called, it's kind of like ouzo. That's a Greek version, but we call it ara, which is very potent. So he didn't have any of the morphine, and we
just use whiskey.
Yeah, he put this in a syringe, and shot himself up with this alcohol. That's how much he needed the morphine. But this was like on a Saturday, and I think that Monday morning, my mom took him to the Pontiac State Hospital, and he was admitted for 2 weeks to get off the morphine. Now, growing up in the 70s, it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. To be honest with you, I tried marijuana. I drank. So did the rest of my family. 2 of the 8 siblings, I had one sister that was hooked on cocaine, and she ended up going to rehab, and 30 days or whatever, she was fine. She never did it again. I had another sister that I remember every week, rushing her to the hospital because Quaaludes or acid or whatever trip she was on, and she ended up being a crackhead, till, for 20 some years, till she got clean. So 2 out of the 8, not that we did anything different. We all partied or we all experimented, but 2 of us, the one, she realized she had a problem right away and she went to get help. The other one, it was like she fought it all away, so 10%,
right?
Here's more than 10%.
Well, that's, we talk about the cunning, baffling, and powerful aspects of this disease. And it truly is, because it can sit inside your system and just lurk and just almost remain dormant. It's there. It's waiting for you to get to your weakest moment, and then it'll grab a hold of you. And once it grabs a hold of you, you are on a Nantucket sleigh ride. I mean, you might as well be hooked up to Moby Dick, and you don't have Captain Ahab. You don't even have a big, you don't even have a big whaling ship. You're in a little rubber raft if you're lucky. And there's so many pieces that play into it. For example, when we go and talk to these kids, we have such a finite amount of time to try to explain to them who we are, how we got here, or how we got there, how we got here, And then we're also hampered, especially in the public schools, about certain things that we can say, certain things that we can't say, which makes it difficult because this is a disease that's been recognized by the American Medical Association for almost 100 years now, and it's the disease is addiction. That can take the form of alcoholism, any of the drug addictions, whether it's opiates, benzodiazepines, the barbiturates, the cocaine, crack cocaine, now with the sleep medications, the anxiety medications, sure, the antidepressants, but it also takes the form of gambling, pornography, sex, food, power, money, shopping, spending. We are in such the people that are affected with this gene have such a need for that dopamine rush.
Exactly.
That they will do anything to feed that dopamine craving.
Exactly.
And then those dopamine receptors become numb, so you just need more and more and more. And so many of us transfer our addictions, over the years. So you've got that genetic component, and then in my case, I had 13 concussions playing football over, I don't know how many years. And for anybody that knows me, that's not going to surprise them. I mean, everybody's been telling me I was nuts and, got dropped on my head most of my life. So, so be it. But with athletes, there's also an athletic addiction. You talk about the runner's high. You talk about the ego and the glory and the fame, and with professional athletes, with the money and the notoriety and the posse.
Sure.
Everybody's got their group that huddles around them. And in my case, I can go back to 1987. Actually, I can go back to 1984. I had the first of, I'm triply blessed here. First of many chronic kidney stones. I thought I was dying, Sam. I was coming back from a morning workout and thought I was dying. Drove into the emergency room at the hospital, kind of rolled out of the car, and the nurse kind of chuckled when she was asking me about my symptoms. She says, "Oh, you're having a kidney stone," and I didn't know what a kidney stone was. Well, at the time, they gave me an opiate through the IVs, and the pain went away. I passed the stone, and you go home. And then you get to the point where you're playing and you get knee injuries, knee surgeries, back injuries, back surgeries, neck injuries, broken bones. And the first thing they do is, here's a script. And it's like you were saying, it's the Norco, the Lortab, the Percocet, the Vicodin, the hydrocodone, oxycodone, OxyContin, the fentanyl, the methadone. I mean, I've been on all of those, and some of them at the same time.
Sure.
Over the years. Well, I had that gene, but I was functional. I graduated from college. I was successful in the business world. From the outside looking in, I had it all. And then through a series of events, that depression picked up, and now I'm on another class of drugs, the benzodiazepines, the Ativans, the Xanaxes, the Valiums, and I'm still on the opiates. Well, I mean, what a cocktail.
Sure.
And you don't know what day it is, let alone, there is no choice, is my point.
Exactly.
You wake up in the morning and your only thought is, I feel like hell. Do I have enough medicine to make it through the day, the week, 2 weeks? When's my next doctor's appointment? And I don't even want to take these things anymore. I just don't want to feel sick.
Exactly.
So it's a vicious cycle.
I went to an opiate conference and I was asked to speak, and I got there about 12:30, and I spoke at 1 o'clock. And through telling Brianna's story, afterwards people came up, and they they were giving me their condolences, and they said, well, be happy she died at home. And I didn't really get it. She's dead. What do you mean she died at home? Then I heard this other father tell about his son. His son was a hockey player, was really good, and he ended up getting hurt. And from being hurt, he was given the opiates, the pain pills and stuff, and he got addicted to them. So as he got addicted to them, the doctor cut him off. So when he got cut off, he turned to the streets. Until one day he was looking for the pills and says, hey man, I don't have no pills, but I got something better. It's a lot cheaper.
I'd say cheaper too.
So he turned to heroin. So he was trying to steal something, and he got caught. And from that, he was sent to jail. And his father came to the judge. He says, Your Honor, I got money. I'll send him to rehab. So as soon as he gets out of here, the jail, we can send him right to rehab. And they agreed. Well, the doctor let him off one day, or the judge let him out one day early. So his dad was in Cincinnati on business. When he came home, on his answer machine, it says, Mr. So-and-so, I just want to let you know your son is dead. This isn't a joke. I'm really sorry, but you can find your son. They rolled him up in a blanket and threw him on the side of the road like garbage on the corner of such and such street in Detroit. So what happens is, just like my daughter, when she passed, a friend of hers called me on her phone, and I picked up the phone, and she's like, Mr. Jahari, tell me, please, is it true? Is it true? I said, yeah. Please, Erica, don't do this shit, And she said, okay, I will. I won't do this, And she hung up. 2 days later, I found out she had passed the same way. And it was like, just one more time. One more time. As an addict, you just think, I'm going to quit after this one more time. The whole thing is why we go to schools and why we're doing this is so people can understand when you have this problem, when you see addiction is taking over, because that's what happens, is drugs take over. And please, go out and get help.
Oh, absolutely.
Go get some help.
What we're doing is we're self-medicating. And
exactly.
that self-medication, as we were talking about earlier, can take the form of any number of substances.
Yep.
And there are good doctors, there are great doctors, and there are some very, very bad doctors, just like any profession.
Exactly.
And I've experienced both. I have a general practitioner, a GP that I've seen for 18 years that is a wonderful, wonderful doctor, great human being, but woefully uneducated about the disease of addiction.
Exactly. Well, not all doctors are educated in that field.
No, and that was the interesting part. Going through this process, along this recovery journey now, the amount of education and training that our medical professionals receive, unless they are specifically trained for addiction, equates to about 1 day of actual classroom training, 1 day of clinical training. And how are they supposed to treat and advise you? You go to the doctor, you're looking at the doctor. Many of us look at our medical professionals and hold them up to such a high level,
exactly.
High level of esteem, and you're looking to them for answers. And they don't have, a lot of them don't have the answers. I was fortunate in that my GP said to me, Charlie, you need to get in to an inpatient facility. But it was a doctor that kind of triggered my path of destruction.
Sure.
Because of my problems, I was sent to the best pain management doctor in the state of Michigan, supposedly out of Michigan State. And within 3 months, I was on 80 milligrams of OxyContin three times a day.
Okay, let's just give you a little more.
Right. And at the time, I was married to a master's level RN who went with me. And I'm looking to her for guidance and support, and she was great. We sat there with the doctor, and I remember her saying to the doctor, hey, listen, this just doesn't make sense. And he looked at both of us across the table and said, I'm the doctor, he's the patient, labs don't lie. If you don't like what I say, you don't have to come back. well, what kind of answer is that?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. After I lost my child, I was in a depression. I had a hard time getting out of bed. My whole body ached. And my wife, she says, honey, we still have these other 2 kids that really need you. And I don't know what to do for you, but I need you to go get some help. So I went and I started talking to a therapist. And from the therapist, I was referred to the psychologist. So I can get some medication. Within 4 months, I love my therapist. She'd cry with me. She'd laugh with me. She was awesome. But my psychologist, all he knew is to prescribe medicine. Within 4 months, I was on 5 different medications. And the last time I went to see him, he said, well, how's this working out for you? I said, you know what, doctor, I says, I'm still depressed. I said, I lost my child, and I don't think there's anything you're going to give me that's going to make me feel any different. And at that point, too, the doctor looked at me, and he's like, why did you come to see me? And I looked at him. I kind of got up. I said, I don't know why I came to see you, but I know I'm not coming back. I put the prescriptions on his desk, and I walked out and never came back. Did the depression go away? No. I lost my child, and every now and then I'm depressed. But you have to have some kind of faith, to get you through. Right. And I'm a strong believer in that. I'm not here to preach. I'm not trying to convert you or anything. But myself, if I didn't have a strong belief in God, I wouldn't be here today. That's how I was feeling.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest obstacle I know it's the biggest obstacle I face when we're talking to the kids.
Sure.
We're at a public school setting.
Yep.
And for God's sakes, you've got groups of people out there that are trying to, ban the Pledge of Allegiance because it says one nation under God in it.
Exactly.
And you're sitting there looking out at an auditorium of 900 students, and they can wear anything they want on their T-shirt, promoting any catchphrase.
Aeropostale.
There you go. I'm sure you're getting paid to wear that today.
Right.
Because you are the best looking model that I've ever seen, Sam.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. But freedom of speech protects them. They can wear and say anything they want. Yet we are talking about a disease that has one recognized treatment. And the foundation of that treatment is spiritual in nature. It doesn't matter whether you call God, Yahweh, Allah, the pine tree. It doesn't matter. It's your interpretation of your higher power. And we're prohibited from talking about that.
Exactly.
So we're standing there in front of the kids. We're trying to give them education and awareness, which we can do, but we're also trying to provide them with hope. And with people like Alvon and people like Rob and people like Pastor Jim, Pastor Mark, we can talk about, hey, it doesn't have to end like it ended for Brianna and for your family.
Right.
However, we can't tell the kids how to get out of the hole. And we've had administrators say to us, now, guys, listen, remember who your audience is.
Exactly.
Remember where you're speaking.
Right.
So, you and I have had this conversation so many times, Sam. When you were growing up, when I was growing up, street lights come on, you got to be home.
Exactly.
If I got in trouble from my mother, I heard about it from my grandmother, from my aunt, from the neighbor next door. I didn't get one beating. I got 4.
Sure.
Sure. Now, you can't. We have the pendulum of political correctness has swung so far to the left that you can't discipline, you can't criticize, you can't provide constructive criticism, you can't provide any spiritual guidance. One of the reasons that I love coaching at Powers and at Holy Family, where I coached before that, is we are not only allowed to, we are encouraged to pray before practice, pray at the end of practice, pray before the game, pray at the end of the game. We have educational curriculum for the theology tract.
Sure.
But what happens in the home? And that's where community parent comes in. I know my own example. I thought I was the best parent around. I mean, I was a lousy parent. I had no boundaries. I wanted to be their best friend sometimes and their parent at other times, and then wonder why they would get confused. Well, I'm sending them mixed messages. Sure. You can be friends with your kids, but you have to be a parent first.
Exactly. Exactly. I gotten something on Facebook, and we set the examples. Whether our children, they look at us. And to be honest with you, when I went through this with Brianna and they looked upon me, they made me feel like a criminal, where I wasn't doing anything wrong. I'm fighting for my child. My child is in trouble. But they looked at me like I was to blame, and I felt like I did something wrong. The whole thing is we can set the examples, and you can protect your child from anything, but you can't protect them from their best friend or their girlfriend or their boyfriend. And there's crappy parents out there, you know. Let's face it. But I learned that once I went into the system. Okay, but just because there's a few bad apples, don't look at everybody in general as they're all bad.
That's the problem with the the legal model that we have currently in place. It interferes with the more nurturing thing that you're supposed to have in place for treatment. And thing is, I think the TV show Law and Order, Arthur Branch, the guy played by Fred G. Thompson's character, said it best. He said he was fighting this woman because she actually kind of sided with the group that they were actually trying to be prosecuting. And he goes, see, you're warm-blooded, you're hot-blooded, you're involved, you're an advocate. He goes, but to be the force of the law, you got to be cold-blooded. And that's the thing is about this. They have a tendency in law to look at things as a white or black issue, right or wrong. And I'm not saying there's shades of gray. That's a whole different moral perspective. But they have to actually, if they just simply remove it more and put it along the medical lines or the ideas of mental health, treatment and stuff like that, and take it out of the hands of the legal system, it might be a step to prevent this from, let's face it, once they get you on a conveyor belt, it's inescapable.
Exactly.
And see, that's what it's got to be. I mean, I've advocated. I mean, I was a serious prohibitionist about drugs. You sell drugs, you do this, you get time. But after a period of time, you realize I worked with 9 years of probation cases and stuff. A lot of people are addicted to stuff, and you just see the faults falling upon the fact that it's now in the hands of the legal system. And the legal system has got to come. There's only 2 or 3 things a couple of things they can come up with in the legal system. Guilt or innocence, basically, and basically this doesn't apply here.
No, legislating an illness is actually ludicrous. You and I were discussing an article that you had referenced on the community parent. I think it was the community parent Facebook page about. I don't remember the lawmaker's name.
Yeah, legislator in Virginia or something.
Where he wanted to have a mandatory sentencing for. A certain level of possession.
Exactly.
And my response to you when we were having this conversation was that was very much akin to taking a lung cancer patient who has emphysema and saying, if we catch you with a pack of cigarettes, we're putting you in jail. Well, come on.
Exactly. You know what? The whole thing is we keep doing the same things and it's not working. It's time we change. Right. And I don't know why the legislators, they don't see that, and they keep, let's make a bigger sentence or more time. It's not working. It's costing us so much money, If we were to get these people in treatment, it wouldn't cost us this much.
Well, I think I know one of the answers there, Sam. You know what you call, if you look in Webster's dictionary, if you take a group of monkeys, like a herd of elephants. You know what you call a group of monkeys?
No.
It's a Congress. That's the truth. I just learned that today. It was
That's pretty
and I wasn't looking for that information, but anyways, there's a little useless piece of trivia.
That's very good. Very good.
But that article that you referenced that I commented on, I was doing a little bit of research. I'm teaching a class in the fall for UMass on performance-enhancing drugs among students and athletes. So I've been doing a lot of research, and for marijuana offenses alone, and I don't know what the right answer is. You know, legalization, decriminalization, legalization within limits, you know, medical legalization. The bottom line is anything that you can grow in your backyard, you're never going to be able to prohibit. And you don't even need a backyard. You can grow it
anywhere
in your basement with, you know, you don't even need dirt anymore, you know. And it does have a valid medicinal use. And there's enough studies, and then you have to look behind the studies. Is it any worse than alcohol? Who really knows? But if you look at alcohol, look at the problems that alcohol has caused. Now, is prohibition the answer? Of course not. You know, again, that wasn't the answer there either. But for marijuana incarceration alone is costing the U.S. taxpayer $2 billion a year. That's direct out of the taxpayer pocket, $2 billion a year. Now, what's it costing the family? You've got loss of parental time, parental support, spousal time, spousal support, which puts a bigger strain on the public welfare system, which then breeds helps to breed the next generation of abuser of the system, abuser of the drugs, abuser of all the different enabling bodies that are out there. So, I mean, it's a complex problem.
Exactly. You know, the big thing with going to these kids and Community Parent, we've been in front of over 35,000 kids with this message, you know, of addiction. And the whole thing is our brain is developing until the age of 25. And when you use drugs and alcohol, it stops that from growing. And if you know anybody that started early and it seems like their brain stayed right at that. I have a good friend of mine, I mean, since he was 13, 14, and talking to him and stuff, he's still like a 13, 14-year-old, you know, in his brain. That's because it never developed.
Right.
You know? So I think the big thing is we just still have to do our part. You know, sometimes it's like you can have your whole future laid out. And God says, no, I got something I want you to do. And that's how I feel. I feel like I'm supposed to be doing this.
Right.
And you know, having 3-4 kids have come up to me or sent me messages that I've helped save their life, you know. And that's just such a wonderful, wonderful feeling. And communityparent.org, we need your help. We want you to join us because this fight is for our children.
Absolutely.
Okay? They are worth it. They need us. You know, the whole thing is parents, they have a hard time talking to their kids about sex and drugs and all this. We want to make it so that opens up the key so they start talking to each other because that's how it all starts. And this way, we let them know that if something's taking over your life, okay, here's a chance for you to see that there's a problem and hopefully for you to go get some help. To be honest with you, it's like we've been doing this for 3 years. We've been in front of over 35,000 kids. We've been in front of about 42 schools now, 43 schools, something like that. And this has, because of the stigma, you know, administrators have a hard time to let us in.
Right.
You know, we can have our heads in the sand and saying this thing isn't happening, but it's happening in every neighborhood. It doesn't matter where you live. And we want everybody to join us because the louder the voice, the more we're going to get things done. And to be honest with you, after I lost my child, you know, I want to change laws. I want to make some differences. Some things happen, and I can't do it alone. And we really need parents. We really need everybody to come together. Because if we don't, who's going to? Our kids are our future, and we want you to join us, and let's make a difference happen.
You know, it's interesting you bring that up because, you know, I remember going back to September when I was doing my little inpatient vacation down in Brighton. And people would come in and talk to you. And there was basically 3 paths you could